Hey, today I'm going to talk about shamanism again. And before I get into that, I think I want to do a little like channel progress type of thing because this will be my first video like back around the like the series, uh, like the sequence of series that I'm doing. Sounds kind of mathematical, but I uh, I decided to do the 5 different topics with shamanism, the Dolores Cannon book, the Law of One, Buddhism, and non-duality. And yeah, I made one video about each one, and I think I'm undecided if I want to do a formal like this is like shamanism 2 or something, but because for right now I feel like the videos aren't super like they're not like super high quality, I guess. Like I'm kind of just like meandering through ideas and just getting used to talking about things like this. So um, it remains to be seen, I guess, if I'll try to like string these together into like a formal sequence. But um, but yeah, other than that, I'm definitely enjoying making videos so far. It's getting easier and more. I'm like seeing more of the potential in it, I guess, because yeah, I don't know. I feel like once I get good at this, I can do some pretty interesting stuff. Like a lot of well, I don't know, some deep ideas presented in I don't know, interesting ways. You know, I can see you can't talk about what you're gonna do without simplifying it or whatever. Yeah, so I guess that's pretty much it. I'll yeah carry on with what I'm doing, and and yeah, so getting into to shamanism, I sort of realizing what I'm essentially doing with the shamanism videos as well as I think the Dolores Canon and Law of One. It's kind of analyzing mythology because you see a lot of like there's a lot of different ancient mythologies that we talk about, like like the Greek and Roman, like the pantheon of the gods and like the kind of like the creation stories of their civilizations. But in a lot of ways, these modern things can also the modern things like the Dolores Canon and the Law of One, they form themselves into mythologies in a lot of ways. Where like the Dolores Canon talks about like the alternate histories, and those alternate histories are kind of their own mythology that's um, essentially being created by her and by the people that she interviews under hypnosis. And and I think there's a lot of I have a tendency to kind of like reject the mythology that I'm talking about in order to talk about it from like a detached perspective. But I think I'm going to try to learn how to kind of just like accept what the mythology is saying about the world, but continue to keep my own like observer stance of just saying like this is what they say about the world, and this is what I think about the world compared to it. Which yeah, it's just something I'm gradually learning to do, but um, but yeah, with shamanism, it's a little more obvious that it's a mythology because um, I mean basically the stuff I'm talking about, the stuff I've learned about is like Westerners going to Aboriginal like tribal cultures, and just kind of learning the things that they kind of the ideas that they make in their small societies, and the ideas that kind of are common between them because they're experiencing common common experiences. They're having common experiences when they interface with whatever spirits and kind of like deeper parts of the human being, the human mind, and the Western people have kind of formed this into like an overarching mythology that essentially includes the methods and the results of the methods by by essentially being grounded in those original cultures where shamanism was used over long periods of time, and they formed the mythology like directly around the things that they were experiencing, and hmm. and yeah, I think that's really the one of the biggest advantages of shamanism is that it's very grounded in like what you experience in the vision journeys that you have. But at the same time, it is of course it is a mythology. So actually, this may be a. I was going to talk about something different in this video, but I think mythology is a shamanic thing in a lot of ways because um, what you experience in the shamanic journey is in a lot of ways shaped by the mythology that you have in your mind going into it. So if you, yeah, when I talked in the first video about um, the way you do a vision journey, one of the classic methods is to imagine yourself in a forest or like some familiar, comforting space, and then you sort of imagine yourself going down, like climbing it down to like a rabbit hole, or you find a tree and you climb up into it, or like a ladder or something like that. And I think that premise is kind of like like the doorway into the shamanic mythology, because once you initiate the the journey in that way, it kind of leads you cohesively into like an encounter with a spirit guide. And if you think of Buddhism, like there's heavy forms of Buddhism where it's kind of like that, but the traditional like Theravada Buddhism is very much about your own mind and your own like internal experience. So when you sit and meditate, when you're doing a Buddhist practice, you initiate it by like, focusing on your breath or focusing on your body. But with the shamanism, you sort of allow your body to be comfortable and you allow your mind to be comfortable, but you guide yourself very specifically into this like certain like a entryway into the journey. And the character of that entryway matches to the character of the mythos, like the mythology that corresponds to shamanism. And it's going to be different depending on what you've learned about it. A lot of people going into it wouldn't really know anything about it, and so they would maybe start the journey by being in a forest, and then they would enter into I don't know, something with like a lot of Christian archetypes if they're raised in a Christian culture. But if you really like immerse yourself in the shamanic mythology, you like read books and watch videos, and like gain like an understanding of it, when you initiate the journey in that way, it takes you directly into that shamanic mythology of the spirit animals and the spirit guides, and essentially, what essentially forms like a complete experience, which is centered around the things that shamanism and shamanic mythology are centered around. And there's obviously a lot of different things, like the original cultures would have used it for a lot of stuff, but I think as the Western presentation is, it tends to be a lot about healing and a lot about gaining wisdom for like certain problems you have in your life. And so if you essentially like allow the mythology to take its complete form in the vision journey, it keeps you in a certain it keeps you kind of along a certain track where there's all sorts of different things that can happen within the journey, like depending on what sort of the spirit guide you meet. If you meet if you meet an owl, you might also turn into a bird and fly along with it. But if you meet a turtle, you're more likely to just like kind of, I don't know, sit on a riverbank watching the turtle move slowly along. And you see, like there's a very natural things and very very like you enter into the journey, you meet the guide, and then you go on the guide's journey through its character. And in the end, it has something at the end of the journey, like a gift or a lesson that it sort of it's like that thing was always there, and in some ways you can see it as like the thing that you get from the journey was already within you, but the strength of the shamanic mythology is that it gives you a very like instinctive way to just kind of like allow yourself to float along into the journey, and then along with the animal, and then to the destination, and then back out of the journey. And there's not a lot of thinking and decision and like personal, I was going to say like knowledge. Like you don't really have to know what you're doing. You just have to have an idea of what the mythology can give you, and then kind of surrender yourself to the like I was saying, like kind of surrender yourself to the track that it can lead you along. And and yeah, in a lot of ways, this differs from how I tend to do things in my own kind of my own application of the practices, because I come from a perspective of wanting to understand things and kind of like form my own mythology within my own experience. And I think on one level, the way I'm describing this is very like hands off, where you kind of just let the journey happen and see what happens as a result of it. And I think for most people that encounter shamanism, like they go to like a workshop or like an ayahuasca retreat or something. That's maybe one of the common ways people encounter it. For someone like that who essentially wants like an introduction to it and an immediate result, I think this is the way for like a Westerner to encounter shamanism and get sort of the intended effects of it. But my personal way of interacting with it has been to sort of use that sequence as a starting point. The sequence of like being introduced to the mythology and then like allowing yourself to go along for the trip and like see what comes out of it. But I think the next stage from that is to start kind of getting a deeper view, a deeper understanding of the mythology, and then kind of taking it apart and seeing which parts can apply to your life outside of the shamanic journey. Like kind of my original idea for this video was to talk about animism, sort of the idea that everything is alive around us, and I think that's sort of like one of the components, like the facets of the mythology that is I think one of the most applicable things to an everyday life, because the kind of the mythology that we tend to live in this culture is almost like a mythology that we don't realize is a mythology, but that's a whole other topic to talk about. But one of the parts of that is that we think humans are like the only thing in the world. Like we have pets and we see wild animals, but they're like in the Western scientific view, they're like pretty far beneath us. But what shamanism brings back is the idea that like human beings have a soul and animals have a soul and plants have a soul and everything has this like life to them. And I think that's a very important thing to really like incorporate into your life. And in a lot of ways makes the shamanic experience, like the journeys you can have, makes them much more vivid and much more meaningful. Because someone who just has an introduction to the mythology can kind of go into the experience and they meet a spirit, and the spirit is taking the form of an animal, and they kind of get that this is an animal that I see, but it has like a deeper wisdom to it, and they accept that wisdom, and it leads to whatever lesson they can learn within the journey. But then they go back to their real life and they see a squirrel in their yard, and they say, "Oh, silly squirrel burying acorns," and they don't really consider, maybe that squirrel in the real world also has that deeper wisdom, and it's just harder to, it's just not as easily accessible and not as obvious, and yeah, I think to move beyond the very base level of, kind of like the base level of shamanism only being during the journey, to have shamanism be like an everyday view of the world, I think it starts to sort of applying animism and applying the various other parts of it that I'm sure I'll eventually talk about, that allows you to kind of bridge the gap between that specific, journey environment and just the day-to-day, non non-trance journey that we, the waking dream that we're in, and yeah, just kind of form a more holistic view of yeah, just one of the many mythologies that are present in our world and have all sorts of things to offer us. Yeah, that's yeah, cool. That's pretty much everything to talk about. Yeah, I felt great. I I felt pretty well in like the flow of this video. It's interesting. Like some videos feel like I want to go very slowly and very like methodically and be like make sure I'm saying things really precisely. Like I think the Buddhism and Law of One videos will probably be like that, where I want to make sure that I'm really like respecting the source material in the way of like making sure like if I say something, I want it to be in line with the sort of things that Ra talks about, or the sort of things that the Buddha would talk about, which is kind of a I don't know, this, yeah, I won't talk too much more about that, because it is kind of its own video, the whole thing of respecting the source material. But shamanism is something also that I think I give a certain respect to, but I think in a certain way I don't have to think as much when I'm talking about it. And I think it may be just because shamanism is a more like human and more grounded sort of subject, sort of mythology. And I think in that way it's easier to just kind of just talk from the heart, or not the heart, that's not the right place. Kind of talk from the gut in a way of like, I don't know what I'm talking about, like, yeah, like kind of just saying what, like allowing myself to be in a more like emotional state is kind of what I'm saying. And kind of just like let the momentum take me towards whatever thing I'm getting to, whatever thing I'm talking about with shamanism. Whereas, like the Law of One is a very heady, like you have to channel the energy through your mind rather than your body in a way. So yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is that I sort of have to be, I'm trying to be mindful of the way that I speak in videos, and see that the way I speak in this video works for this subject but doesn't work for other ones. And yeah, I want to keep it that way, and keep it where I kind of have a different style in each video, which reflects the underlying style of what I'm talking about. But yeah, some part of that will be conscious, and some part of it just kind of happens intuitively. But yeah, I hope you're enjoying the videos, or enjoying this video. Yeah, I'll see you around.